All right, welcome back to the Ottawa studios of Inside My Canoe Head. I am your host, Dr. D. Listen, today we are going to close out Season 13 as we get ready for the upcoming 5-year anniversary episode of this podcast and the launch of Season 14. You're going to want to listen to this. You're going to want to know what's coming. The world of preparedness is about to be turned on its head. So sit back, grab yourself your favorite beverage. Let's get at her. We love an 80s beat. Everybody loves a little percussion. Those of you who listen to the podcast long enough know that I am a diehard former percussionist that was never any good, but kept slamming away at the drums. Listen, thanks for joining us again here on Canada's #1 Preparedness podcast. We are going to close out Season 13 today. Now, I know it sounds crazy. Season 13, episode number 340 plus. We've been at this near 5 years. And on Monday the 28th, 2 incredible things are going to happen here in the nation of Canada. Number 1 is there's going to be an election. But number 2, which I think is the more important one, is it's the 5th anniversary of the first episode of Inside My Canoe Head that I launched during the pandemic. And the entire swing fire, as we would say in the Army, of my entire future career turned on a dime when I realized a month into the pandemic that absolutely no one, except for an exceptional few within our population, and this is generalizable to the world, were ready for a pandemic, were ready for a significant disruption, had a pivot plan. They were ready to go. They swung fire. They launched their strategy. They continued into other lines of income. They replaced whatever was launched. Their family was good to go. Everything was a mild disruption for them, but they actually came out of the pandemic better than they would have had they stayed with their regular plan. That's the point of preparedness, folks. The point of preparedness is to set you up for success so that when these significant events happen, these exogenous shocks beyond your control, you are able to navigate it far better than your neighbor. The impact to you and your family is far less, and to some degree, it doesn't influence how you earn an income, how you run your life, and the relationships that you have. That's the purpose of preparedness. We don't teach the victim mentality here, which is exactly what the public sector professional messaging of, have a kit, be informed, get a plan. Their message is all about creating a set of professional victims. We're telling the population you're going to get hurt by the event. We're telling you to hunker down and do nothing, etc. Here at Inside My Canoe Head, and based upon well over a decade of research that I've been doing in the field of individual and community preparedness, that's just an idiotic message. It's dumb. It's grounded in 40 years ago theory of thermonuclear war. It plays no value in the current world, but because of a large, significant pandemic of sunk cost fallacy, there's very few people in the emergency management world that are willing to let go of this baby and are willing to let it go and see it off to its demise. So as we approach Emergency Preparedness Week, you are going to be inundated with a whole bunch of stuff grounded in a message that has no evidentiary support. But here we go. I'm actually being nice this year because at a certain point I realized no matter how much I write about it, exceptionally little will change. People believe and have the opinion that emergency kits are the way to save the day. They're not. There's no evidence to support that. But the point being is they love it. They think it's great. A small portion, my measurement is about 29.5%. So let's call it about 30% of the population believes that message to be true and actively runs around and throws a bunch of posts up about their family emergency kit. And somehow within the emergency management field, that is taken as some type of validation that what they're doing is correct. But what they don't understand is, and I've done the research across Canada on this, is it's the same 30%. They're not reaching anybody new. The number of people adopting the emergency kit idea is 0 on average every year, statistically squared away for the changes in population is near 0. It's a nominal number. You're not increasing the number of people who believe that. You're just getting the people excited who already have adopted that message. So the point being is here, what we want to do is close out season 13, bring to a summary the things that we talked about in this season. And then what I really want to do is hit on where we're going next season, because there's something innovatively different that we're doing in season 14, which will kick off after. The initial episode will be the celebratory episode on Monday. That we've got great things planned. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Celebratory episode that we have happening then. And then what we have following that is a specific defined series, a no BS idea of how to become prepared, right? People have wrote books, people have made courses. Well, guess what? We're going to give it to you in what we're calling your 4-step, 8-hour process to resilience. It's all there. We're going to lay it out. Everything that we say here at Inside My Canoe Head is grounded in evidence. I can back up what I tell you with research, not just because I may have a PhD and I'm a professor in the field and I own a research company in it and all that other stuff. No, what I tell you is grounded in evidence, and I can back up the evidence that says emergency kits are junk. And I can back up the evidence that say building a relationship with your neighbor is probably the most consequential thing that you can do to improve your post-event outcomes. That is the antithesis to the message that's in the theory now. But again, there's something really interesting, and I talk about science a lot on this, and I've berated people who think science is settled and all those ridiculous comments that are out there. But listen to this. It's very, very clear. In science, we couldn't give two craps about your opinion and belief, right? The world's full of people with opinions, and the worlds are full of belief. Listen, just look at the recent American election. Look at the upcoming Canadian election we're going to have. Look at the recent election in the United Kingdom. And look around the world at all these things that are on the go. Everybody has an opinion and belief, and none of it matters. When you're a scientist, none of that matters. All scientists are concerned about is the evidence support for something. Can I make a statement, and can I back it up with evidence? So when you tell me, in my opinion, this is, I think that's great. That it might actually be built on 20 years of experience. Great. We don't care in science. We don't. We don't care about your opinion, and we don't care about what you believe. We care about what the evidence tells us to be true, or is likely to be true, or has a statistical confidence interval. And so the idea of science is it advances the understanding of the world around us. Now, when we normally consider science, everybody thinks about the natural sciences, physics, geometry, chemistry, mathematics, geography, that type of thing. But when we translate to social sciences, my role and responsibility, and why I just didn't start this preparedness, get a bug out bag and type of world that you see all over YouTube, I looked at it and said, you know what, there is some evidentiary support. There's research that tells us if humans do certain things, those activities lead to better post-event outcomes. Because I think the goal of everything that we're trying to do in preparedness, and what we talked about in season 13 in different ways, is we're trying to improve your post-event outcomes, which means two things. One, it means you're able to navigate whatever the disruption is with a lower impact on your daily operations. So getting impact to zero is near impossible. It's like reducing risk to zero. We can't do that. But what we can do is set you and your family up so that as events happen that are beyond your control, it has a far lower impact on how you conduct your normal daily lives. That's the first part of better post-event outcomes. The second part of better post-event outcomes is that you emerge at a rate higher than that of the average society. What I mean is you're down for a period a lot shorter, than the rest of society. So if the pandemic knocked society down for a year, you're down for 6 weeks. That's what I mean. You have a lower impact, so the pandemic hurt you less than everybody else, and you were back up and running and earning at the same, if not a higher level, 6 weeks later, where other people were a year, 2 years, 3 years in some cases, even with government support before they returned to a sense of normalcy. That's what better post-event outcome means. And so I look at a population of people, and this is how we got to a lot of the theories that we talked about in season 13. As I look at the Canadian population, and I do most of my research in my home country. I do some of it in the United States of America, but I look at the population of Canada, and I look at how people were impacted by the pandemic, and then I look at everybody was hit by the pandemic the same way. So everybody had largely, especially in urban areas, a common set of circumstances. The economic lockdown, the job losses, the potential impacts from a health event, the public health restrictions, all of these things were largely experienced on everybody, right? This is not a question of equitable experience and who was exposed more or hurt more. I'm just talking about society was put on this. So then we look at there was a segment of the population who did better than everybody else, who had those better post-event outcomes that I talked about, who were harmed less and were able to bounce back exceptionally faster than everybody else. So when we identify that population and we characterize them with demographics, right? So we got to figure out, how do we put a boundary around these people? So we're able to put a boundary around them through a couple of formulas that we came up with. And then we started to examine, what did these people do differently that led to their better post-event outcomes? We identified them from a population. We know they had a better post-event outcome. So what did they do differently than everybody else? First thing that you have to eliminate is, was it simply a question of money? Were the rich better off? And the answer to that is no. We could not find any linkages between financial resources and better post-event outcomes. Then we had to look at, was it cultural? Was it familial? Was it urban versus rural? And when we start taking those things away and realizing that it wasn't any of those, we then started to look at what were the key elements what were the variables that these people did that were differently. And 3 emerged. And these are 3 variables that we're going to talk about a great deal more in season 14. But I wanted to ground it in what we've talked about in the previous seasons, but especially in season 13, is number 1, it's the strength of the relationships. So the one thing the people that did better had exceptionally strong connections to a small bonded group of motivated individuals, and they were very strongly connected to their community. And it was a measurement of social capital. And there's a bunch of different ways to measure it. If you're interested in different ways and how we measure social capital, you can look at the Institute for Social Capital online, has a bunch of articles about that. The World Bank even has what they call an IQ standard. Investigative questionnaire for social capital measurement is available on the World Bank. So this is not just something that I do on my own. This is a standard. So we looked at that and said, okay, when you apply that data to people, you find that people with really strong social capital, in other words, they have great connections that they can count on with trust, trustworthiness, norms of reciprocity, they come out of events better. Okay, great. That's one. Number 2 is they had a strategy. And the difference, these people sat back at some point prior to the emergence of the pandemic and said, if I get punched upside the head, what am I going to do? That's a very simplistic way of looking at it. But in some form or another, these individuals had thought through, what happens when I get fired? What happens when my house burns down? They weren't catastrophic thinkers in doomsday planners, but just in the sense of not only thinking through the event, but they had a pre-existing strategy. They didn't know what the punch would be. They didn't know whether it'd be a tornado, a fire, a death of their spouse, or a pandemic, but they were thinking of, if I get punched upside the head and have a significant calamitous event that happens in my life, what the hell do I intend to do about it? And so they had a strategy of what they intended to do. And the most influential group, this isn't the third one, but the most influential group had a very clear strategy for when they got fired, right? Because in most part, the pandemic, believe it or not, was a far more economic event than it was a medical event. Yes, people died, I get that. But the impact of the pandemic was far more economic than it ever was on human beings. And so these people, this group that we were able to segregate, had really strong relationships and strong ties to their community and great support systems. And two, they basically had a plan for when they got fired. They had thought through calamities, and they knew that when they got fired, it was their responsibility to do something else. And that was the third element, is personal responsibility. It's attitudinal. This group of people believed that no matter what happened to them, no matter whose fault it was, that if they wanted to have a better post-event outcome, that if they wanted to not stay down when they got punched, to use a Mike Tyson reference, that it was their personal responsibility. Now, it wasn't about tons of money. These aren't these gurus on TV that talk, this isn't the Simon Sinek's of the world. This is the people who listen to Simon Sinek. This is the people who listen to Chris Williamson and other people who talk about the roadmap and the strategy is personal responsibility. Even Mel Robbins' latest book on the let them theory, which I think is freaking brilliant. It talks about these people were very, very clear in that they were successful because they understood that it was their responsibility to get out of the hole of the pandemic. It wasn't the government's responsibility to pay their bills. It wasn't a government's role to implement some plan or strategy to rescue them. They understood it was their responsibility. So when you looked at the three variables that we found and stood out from our research here at Preparedness Labs Incorporated, we realized that it was your strong social capital. So that's the strength of your interpersonal relationships and social networks that you have established and maintained in your life. It was your thinking of cataclysmic event and planning. And it was basically this event was grounded in the financial side of it, but these people understood that life is probably going to give them a sucker punch that they're not going to see coming. It's going to hurt exponentially bad. And they better have a plan now in times of peace and calm to deal with it. And the final one is all of this was wrapped in an attitudinal ideology of personal responsibility. They didn't have massive self-confidence. These weren't the big buff folks at the gym. These were just humans who understood that the world punches you upside the head, and it's your job to pick you and your family up and move forward. It's your job to have a strategy for when you get fired. And all of that requires exceptionally strong human relationships. So that's the summation of what came out of season 13, is those three key elements is what fueled the population of people who did exceptionally well in the pandemic. Some of them came out of the pandemic far wealthier than they were before and in a better life position. So in other words, we don't want to ever say it out loud, but here it is. For a small segment of the population, the pandemic was life-changing in a positive way. Now, that's not how we think about pandemics, but there were people, and I like to study groups who do well in downtimes and calamities, because then you learn to understand, as we do in science. I'm looking for not what I believe, not what my opinion are, because that's my hypothesis going in, but what does the evidence tell me? When people do these things, it equates to better post-event outcomes. Now, is science definitive? Absolutely not. And anybody who tells you science is settled on anything in the world, they don't understand science, right? You just have to let those people talk. They don't know what they're doing. Science is the best level of knowledge that we have at this time based upon the evidence as we currently understand it. That is science, right? There may be new emerging evidence that I found in some research I have planned in 2025. If you've looked at it, we've got some great stuff coming up in July and August, looking into recent disasters that happened in the United States and talking about those very things that I just spoke about, and doing the same type of assessment on North Carolina, Florida, and California to understand whether what we found in Canada in the pandemic turns out to be generalizable. Right? I don't know if it's true. I think it's true. That's my belief and opinion. And that's my hypothesis, that the people who did better in the pandemic are going to have these variables. But my responsibility as a researcher is to go find out that whether that's true or not, and I'll report back. It'll be in an article in the fall issue of the Journal of Preparedness in Canada, which is a journal we produce here at Preparedness Labs Incorporated, and it's on our website, preparednesslabs.ca, or it'll be up in a week or so. We're in a bit of construction there. So that's season 13 in a wrap, right? We're realizing that there is real science to be done in preparedness, and there's real evidentiary support for certain things. So you have a choice in preparedness to do what people tell you to do or do what the evidence says to do. The choice is always yours, right? You can simply listen to somebody and say, oh, well, this guy tells me to build a bug-out bag, and I have to be ready for economic collapse on YouTube. And these people have tens of thousands, if not millions of subscribers and hundreds of thousands of views every week. And you think, well, if 100,000 people are viewing it, it must be right. Well, then you don't know science, right? Science tells us that it's evidentiary support. So if you challenge these people, what is your evidence? Not your opinion, not your belief. What is your evidence to demonstrate that this is the right course of action for me to do? And a lot of the times you'll get that dead air like you do at the hospital. And really the end result of all of that is we're simply saying, I'm here to offer you, and as we're going to lead now into the discussion of season 14, is non-apocalyptic, evidence-based preparedness education for rational people. I'm the CEO of that. This is what we do at Preparedness Labs Incorporated, and our audio podcast version is Inside My Canoe Head. We pass this message on. I take the best evidence as we understand it today. I translate that into things you can actually do, and I provide that to you for free here on the air, right? Because yes, I have a couple of books, and they're available on ebooks on Amazon and on my website. And what a book provides you is it summates it in a small place. But I'm going to give you all of this information free of charge. You don't have to buy a thing. You don't have to sign up for an email list. That's the purpose of this podcast. It's the purpose of the YouTube channel, and it's the purpose of my Substack. I write it, I video it, and I talk about it. And it's all out there. Consume it on any medium you want. We are going exponential in season 14. Season 14 kicks off on Monday, the 28th of April, with the 5th anniversary podcast episode for Inside My Canoe Head, which actually started 3 or 4 months before we started the company, Preparedness Labs Incorporated. So the podcast is older. The podcast, as I said, was generated out of an abject lack of preparedness and absolute dependency on the government to rescue the people in a pandemic. And I couldn't believe that people were so ill prepared for that. But then I understood these aren't dumb people. They just didn't, nobody had said to them that bad things can happen to you and that it's your job to be prepared. So they just assumed that life would continue lollipops and ice cream. And it didn't. So there we were. So season 14, we are launching off with as I said, we have created, and based upon evidence, we've created a 4-step 8-hour road to resilience process. And we're going to roll that out in 4 podcast episodes and 4 YouTube episodes. We're going to create a YouTube playlist on the channel of Preparedness Labs, and it's all going to have it there. And there'll be a podcast version of it, and there'll be a written version of it. So all of this will be coming out over a 4-step period. So basically, if your family, if your community, if you as an individual are interested in adopting preparedness, not what the government says, not what you see on YouTube with preppers and societal collapse, but if you're actually interested in doing what evidence says leads to better post-event outcomes, we're going to lay it out for you. And at the end of it, we're going to upload this beautiful, created, colorful, and simple download available on the website that will have all of that information. So you'll be able to download it in a PDF. You'll be able to watch it on YouTube. You'll be able to listen to it on the podcast. Everything that you need to know to begin your journey on your road to resilience is going to be free of charge, and we're going to rock that out for you because we think it is ridiculous if you continue to follow the public sector resident-facing preparedness communication. It will not get your family prepared for a disaster. It will not make you more resilient. And at a certain point, I realize I can't change the system, but I can give you what actually the evidence and science says is appropriate. So with that, I appreciate everybody who's joined us to this point. All of our followers, we are currently downloaded around the globe. We are downloaded in 111 different countries. And remember, there's only about 194 on this planet. There's well over 30,000 downloads, 300 plus episodes. We have engagement from around the world. We are listened to in all corners. Somebody joked with me once that somebody said they listened to me in McMurdo Station in Antarctica. I have no idea if that's true, but I have downloads in every continent and in almost every country in the world. This is a global reach podcast. We are here to pass on intelligent information, something that is somewhat hard to find in the ecosphere right now. Listen, stay tuned. Season 14 is going to be epic. The volume and the extent to which we're going to be reaching out. We've invested a great deal of time and effort over the last 60 days in putting together a season 14 that we think is going to be worth your attention. We appreciate you continuing to listen here to Inside My Canoe Head, and I want to thank everyone to this point who has helped us. Many thanks will be offered up in our big episode coming up in season 14 on Monday. But for now, thank you. A personal thank you to each and every one of you. We appreciate you being here. This is a dream. It's my community service. And for that, I am humbly thankful. So if you want to do one thing to support this podcast, please drop over to our website, insidemycanoehead.ca. It flicks you over to the Buzzsprout. Then you can go down to the very bottom. There's a little heart there, and you can buy me a cup of coffee. Because I love coffee. I appreciate it. Take care, stay safe, and we'll see you in season 14.